Hello, welcome back to another Found Channel. I'm Jim J. Book Square. And today we are talking Annals Verses about the Dog Stars and the Dog Stars. One written by this man, one directed by Ridley Scott. I know it's written by somebody else, but it's his normal collaborator, so it's not really that big of, I'd say Ridley Scott. When I talk about this film more directly at Ridley Scott. The way this video works, in case you are curious, we're going to talk about the book review, and then we're going to do a movie review, and we'll do a little bit of a comparison depending on how many thoughts I had at the end. I'll also tell you which one I liked better, if I liked either of them better, if I liked them both equally. I've had situations like that come across as well. It really just depends, and I try to cover the latest adaptation. Based when it came out, there were quite a few that came out this month, and the one I chose was the Dog Stars. I was curious about the cast, and that was intriguing enough. Also, I do enjoy a post-apocalyptic tale. So before we get started, let's go ahead and jump into a Jacob on a Different Day, tell you about the books I've written in case you want to buy any of those. The course of the last half of last year, I wrote and released a trilogy called Gunshot Residue, starting with Gunshot Residue, leading to its sequel P49, leading to its conclusion Mr. and Mr. St. James. As one, this is it. This is Gunshot Residue, the complete edition. I'm gonna read you the new blurb, and it's how far are the bounds of love. Alex St. James lived a perfectly normal life. That was until he learned of his husband's secret. Marcus St. James had always lived two different lives. Now both are coming crashing into one another. As more secrets come to light and the choices neither can take back, will Alex and DeMarcus be able to survive the fallout? How many times can one person be wrong before they can't forgive, let alone forget? Gunshot Residue is a bind-up of 3 novellas. Gunshot Residue, P49, and Mr. and Mr. St. James. It's a romantic suspense trilogy. Contains content best suited to readers. It doesn't really tell you what the secret is, however you do know that there is a secret. Marcus is a spy. That is like the biggest thing. The whole point of the series, why I couldn't tell you about it, is I do have comm titles. They're just fucking movies, and I couldn't tell you anything about it. And that is the most egregious one. I think it's so obvious. I try to make it so obvious. I try to make the cover make it so obvious. And that is Mr. and Mrs. Smith. My favorite movie. One of my favorite movies of all time. I adore that film with so much love. That's definitely what this entire inspiration was. I was like, how can I do Mr. and Mrs. Smith and make it gay? Alright, now we can go ahead and talk about this book. The Dog Stars, the novel, follows our main character Hig as he is in a post-apocalyptic world where a virus came through and destroyed the population, kind of like a flu that translated into a blood virus as well. He lives in a world where people, it's like a live or die situation. If you have resources, people will kill for you, type of thing. He's currently living on a airport farm with someone named Braylon, something out of those lines. Starts with a B. Played by Thanos. And this follows Hig and his dog Jasper as they go from one place to another. They go out, they go scout, they get things, and they bring them back to this place. And essentially this is the same type of loop that the story does follow for the majority of the book. And once we get to the point where the book starts to veer into other paths, they're into other pathways. The story itself gets into spoilery territory, so we're not gonna really talk. I'll talk a little bit about that stuff in the comparison. But for just the initial book review part of it, I don't really know how long it's gonna be. I have like some angry thoughts to talk about, but not really, to be honest with you. I guess all I'm gonna really say right here, story-wise, it's all I can really tell you. It's about a boy, a man. He's in his late 40s. Or I guess he's in the beginning of his 40s when the story begins, and by the end, he's towards his late 40s. He's friends with this other guy who's much older than him. I'd say probably like 10 years older. And the cast of characters do skew a bit older as well for everybody involved. He was originally married at one point. She has since passed away. That is something you do know. You also do know that Jasper was their dog. And we know that's like a pretty big tie, and things are those lines. Okay, those are the big things. The way this book is written, it to a lot of people was very infuriating. I didn't really have the issue with like no dialogue tags, no quotation marks, no nothing. This book doesn't have any of that from what I understand based on the reviews. And a lot of people had a lot of problems with the way it was written when it came out. I had a lot of problems with the way it was written as well, but mostly because of this was a very frustrating read. Hig as a character is not very fun to follow. He's quite boring is the best way I know how to describe it. He lives in a world filled with violence while also being a somewhat of a pacifist as well. And so there's parts of this that can get very frustrating when the tension is increasing. You're following a character who doesn't want the tension to really increase. You're still going through situations where he puts himself in harm's danger because of XYZ reasons. And so I think there are certain action sequences that are fun, but they are very quick and they're very easy to read through. That's also the other thing, is the stakes on this one felt kind of low, which is interesting because it's dealing with such a high stakes situation. The other thing I don't like about this is the language in it as well. Feels like it's written by someone who is a lot older, who is trying to write, I don't know, it just didn't come across very well for me personally. It's also been a long time since I've read a male book where the women are just like particularly like sex objects. I'm not saying that Sinew, when she does show up in the story, is presented, or even his wife. His wife, I feel like, has a lot more warmth to her. Sinew definitely feels more like a sex object. From the minute one that we see her, when she shows up later on in the story, the most things that are talked about is not her personality, who she is, her name, anything that makes her her. There are moments, don't get me wrong, it's really about her boobs and the way her butt moves and oh my god, look at that, type of thing, which felt understandable because of the situation that he was in, but also it felt like gratuitous. That's the book. I landed on a 2-star for the book. I did not like it. It was boring, like I said. I also didn't like the language, like I mentioned, and I didn't really like how it was descriptive in female writing, and in the those lines, I felt like I was reading Stephen King and I didn't sign up for Stephen King. That's really what it was. Okay, Stephen King's the only person that comes to mind. He doesn't actually really write that way anymore, but there's a lot of old thriller authors and stuff that are pretty popular still who write the same way, where it's like, or sci-fi fantasy authors. I know that comes up sometimes as well, and sometimes it's done like in a motivational sexual way, which is weird and doesn't come across very well because it's written by a man, or sometimes it's just glorifying the women. This one feels more like glorification and trying to be like, oh my god, she has big tits, so obviously she's great type of moment. I wouldn't even say they're described so much that like I have a pretty good idea. But either way, the movie, on the other hand, would flip over to the movie side of things. I'm landing on a 1.5, I think. Me and my mom, when I told her I gave it a 2, she said that was generous, which I thought was kind of funny. So I did lower it. I also think it's like a terrible adaptation. I didn't like the adaptation, but for that, I think I can lower it a little bit less. It is a movie, so there's slightly a little bit more enjoyment in it. However, I was so bored during most of it that I just, the enjoyment was not very much there. This is not a lot to say on the cast itself. I think Josh Brolin, Mark Qualley, and Jacob Elordi, who have the most screen time out of the okay cast they gathered together, it's fine. It's objectively fine. There's nothing wrong with them in these roles, except for they're all miscast. Josh Brolin's character should have been older. I actually think he's probably the age appropriate most. However, he could be also the lead of this movie and been fine. Jacob Elordi is too young, and Mark Qualley is also too young. Lee Pierce is also in this as well. He has a pretty substantial role, much bigger than in the book itself for when the characters that show up. He's also just fine here. I've seen him better in other places, and that's fine. So that's the acting out of the way, right? We gotta get through that. Cinematography is also very beautiful. We're living, we're in Idaho, we're in Nevada. Like, these are places that are Denver, Colorado, those type of things that are just objectively beautiful. You go and film there, it's gonna be beautiful. And I don't know if they filmed exactly in those locations or not, or they have stand-ins. Stand-ins were just as gorgeous. There's many shots of mountains, and they're out in the woods a lot, and it's just really pretty. So I can't really say anything in cinematography wise. I will have to say the action sequences, in my opinion, were quite dull and boring, especially having seen like Steven Spielberg's. I didn't really like Disclosure Day. However, its action sequences ramped up the story, and I felt like moved it really beautifully along. These ones felt kind of bogged down. Also, this movie does take a lot of liberties. It's a very bad adaptation. We're really only following in name only, and I have a feeling it's going to piss some people off. It's going to make some people happy. I was kind of hoping for it to be a more of a looser adaptation because I didn't like the book, and so I was kind of open to a change into the story. And instead, what I got was a change. Just wasn't good. Like, it wasn't a good change. They didn't do anything to elevate the material. They didn't do anything to move the material along. Honestly, there's parts of the story that I think made the material worse, which is fascinating. They had more villains to the story, they had more action to the story, and all of those places just didn't feel it jammed together. So I'm landing on a 1.5. There's also some pretty, in my opinion, offensive things in the book and the movie too. And so obviously rating a little bit lower for those reasons as well. Going into the comparisons, once again, like I had mentioned, the comparisons do kind of stop at the name level base. Yes, this is Higgs. Yes, this is Josh Brolin's character. I can't remember his name, sorry. Brinkley, something along those lines. They're in an airfield. He is going from place to place. Yet, in the book, it takes a long time for, this is obviously spoilers if you guys did not know. In the book, this takes a long time for him to get to Senna and her father. It also takes a long time for the dog to actually die. Like, a long time for the dog to actually die. The dog dies probably 10 minutes into this movie. I was really shocked by that. There was no time to really develop the dog. There was no time to really feel the loss of the dog and feel this change in this character. I did really like the fact there is no narration. Some people are going to be annoyed with this. There isn't really any clarity on how the virus works, how the blood works, how everything works. I think the book does do a little bit better of a job, but not like a great amount of job with it, to be honest with you. I don't really think you need to be specific for these things. However, I could see people being annoyed. My mom surely was annoyed with it. Other things that were interesting, the book changed to the movie. Once again, the timeline was just really sped up. Senya and her father don't really show up in the story until like 60 to 70% into the book. They do take up the rest of the story for the majority of the time. It's about his relationship building with this woman. And I didn't pick up the parallels of like Jasper dies and he meets a woman and he kind of treats her the same. And so it almost seems like the replacement for the dog is the woman, which I think makes a lot of sense for the story. It just more like furthers the misogyny angle that I was just talking about, in my opinion, that we're having. Literally, he meets this girl. Also, I think the movie does do a little bit better. Like I said, Senya as a character in the book, she has a few other things going for her, but like she's a doctor and things. It really is about like he wants her, she wants him, and then they have like a really long, overly graphic sex scene. In my opinion, it felt so out of place. And in the book, in the movie, he's really dedicated to his wife. There's a lot of moments between these. They don't really like, the chemistry is fine. They seem more like siblings and or friends in the movie than they actually do as romantic partners. When they do kiss at the end, which is supposed to be this breakthrough moment, I didn't really feel it just because the chemistry wasn't really there between the two actors. Also, just knowing the timeline of things, which is somewhat of an issue. They don't really do that in the movie. The movie doesn't really seem like it's passing a lot of time. In the books, we're passing years of time. So like it's a long time we're with these characters. So yeah, so that's like one of the things. However, Ridley Scott decided that he still wanted that angle to be in the book where she's kind of more treated as a sex object and things. And so they did introduce this whole entire subplot that I don't remember being in the book at all. Let me know if it is or if it's not. And that's where he, over the radio sequences, he has this like moment where he hears something, this woman talking to him about this location, and he decides that his mission is to go to this location. Hopefully it's better than what he's living in now and more back into like normal reality. They get there, and like I said, I don't remember this being a part of the book at all, because for instance, in the movie, they're attacked at Pops and Senna's place. They have to like run off and do this thing and go to this place because they're attacked, and we'll get into the actual villains of the story here in a second, as I was kind of offended by them. I thought they were like, what? And so they end up going there, and Darlene's played by Allison Janney, which I was really looking forward to because I like Allison Janney, but I didn't like any part of like whatever they were doing here. And essentially they were trying to find, they had a doctor, and they weren't good enough. They were going to drug them and kill them and then eat them. That's essentially what these people were going to do. Essentially, they were going to kill the men, and they were going to take the woman, and then she was going to become like a sex slave, I guess, is essentially what it was. And it was just really bad. Like, the storyline overall was bad. It was very low. Like, it wasn't even like there was any suspense with it or anything like that. It was just overall poorly done. So, yeah, the whole thing was just, it was just very poor. It was very poorly done. And then let's talk about the villains real fast. So, obviously, Darlene is a villain in the story. She takes up a portion of the third act. She is the through line point of the story as well. She is our, you know, overarching whatever. Also, the overarching story is him getting over, in the movie at least, his dead wife. He does that pretty quickly in the book. Well, I mean, he takes a long time with it. It's just, it's not like, oh, I can't be with you, you know. No, it's I can be with you, it's fine type of thing, which is kind of funny. The villains in the book, the movie, they turn them into like this group called like the Reapers or something along those lines. They're painted in white. They have writing drawn on them. They look a certain way, if you get my drift, and it felt kind of weird. Also, the scene where they do attack, where we see them and they attack this place, which didn't make a lot of sense. The movie didn't really set up very well that they would attack this home base, which doesn't have happening in the book. The home base does get attacked. It's not shown though, and I don't like what they did show. Here, I thought the action sequence was quite poor. Or they put Josh Brolin in dark paint because it's nighttime. It looks like blackface, but it's dark paint. And then you have these like Mad Max white, like overly white painted creatures. You get my point here? You get my drift? And I only bring this up because Ridley Scott is a director who I think would do all of these storylines and not have a problem with it based on his previous work. So I just thought I should point it out and put it out there. I don't know if anybody else is going to pick up on it. I don't know if anybody else is going to care, but I cared, and it definitely affected my viewing experience. But with that being said, that is this. Like I said, I guess I like the book a bit better, but I wouldn't recommend either, if I'm going to be honest with you. This is one of those videos where I'm like, here's all the spoilers. Now you don't have to go see it. That's really what this is for. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments if you've read or seen this and what your thoughts were, and maybe I just had a bad interpretation. Let me know in the comments. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.